Hello everyone, welcome back to the classes. How are you all? I hope you all are doing very well. You all are very good. So, students, what the thing is, if you remember that in the last session we have started a new chapter, that is the coal and petroleum. So now we are just continuing with the same chapter and we are going to see now what are the fossil fuels, what is the coal and petroleum. As in the last session we have seen that what are the resources, what are the types of the resources exactly. Now we are going to see these topics in today's session. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, so these are the topics, students. As you can see, we are going to discuss about the fossil fuels. Then we'll see what is the coil, carbonization, products obtained from coil and application, that what the products we are obtaining from coil and what are their applications is. Okay, then these are the products which we are getting from coil, that is the coke, coal tar, coal gas, and then we are going to discuss about the petroleum. Fine. So all these are the topic, students, which we are going to cover up in today's session. Okay, so now let's just start with this session. So now, student, first of all, discussing about the fossil fuels. As I have already told you this thing. Okay, where it is. Okay, now I got it. That we have already discussed one thing, that the fuels, that we are having fuels. So fuels are something, or we can say these are the material substances which gives energy, or we can say a large amount of energy on heating or burning. On heating or burning, we'll get a large amount of energy from them, so we call them as the fuels. Now student, fuels are also of different type. Okay, like we are having solid fuels, liquid fuels, or something like that also. But if we talk about generally fossil fuels, so what the fossil fuel says, so student, fuels is that only from which we are getting a large amount of energy on heating or burning. But what is the fossil fuel? Fossil stands for decay, or you can say that and decay of the living organism. Okay, that means, students, that the fuels which we are obtained from the fossils of the living organisms, we call them as the fossil fuels. And the examples of the fossil fuels are, student, it is the coal, petroleum, and the natural gas. And we'll see that how we are getting it. Okay, fine, that what's the process about it. So first of all, what are the fossil fuels? So fossil fuels are something which we are getting from the dead and decay of the living organism, and then we use them as the fuels, that we generate a large amount of energy from them by heating them or by burning them. Okay, that we called as the fossil fuels. But now, students, here a very important question, that whether we consider them as the exhaustible resources or not. So students, what happened, that the fossil fuels, if we talk about fossil fuels, so these are the few, students, that which are formed over a long period of time, like it will take 300 to 400 millions of years to get formed. Exactly, that means, students, if we are consuming fossil fuels, that means coal and petroleum, natural gas, more and more, it's like that we are consuming them so much, that means we are having them in a very limited amount. We are having them in very limited amount, and if we are having them in a very limited amount, so student, it's our duty to use them wisely. Okay, if we are using them more than the requirement, and it's like we are doing wastage of it, so it will be the condition, student, that one day they are going to be exhausted at one point. So that's how, student, fossil fuels are considered as the exhaustible resources. And what type of exhaustible resources? They are the type of non-renewable resources. That means, student, you can't renew them, that you can say it will take a long period of time, and for that period of time, student, you can't wait. Like if I say today coil is not here and we have to prepare it, that means we have to wait for 300 to 400 million years. That is not possible for us. Exactly. So that is why fossil fuels are called petroleum and natural gas, which we are getting from the dead and decay of the living organism, and they are the type of the exhaustible resources. And what type of exhaustible resources? They are non-renewable in nature, and they are formed from the decomposition of the dead organic matter. That organic matter, like if we talk about animals, human beings, or plants, so the from that dead organic matter we get the fossil fuels, that is the coal, petroleum, and natural gas. Fine, so these are the fossil fuels. Now coming to the next topic, that is the coil, that how, what is coil and how coil is getting formed. Okay, so now, student, coil is something, or we can say coil is a fossil fuel which is black in color, like it is completely black, but it is having a more content of carbon, more content of carbon. Because student, as we can see that the coil we are getting from the fossils. Okay, and we know this thing, students, that the living organisms are made up of the carbon compounds. That means if we are getting we are having fossils, and from that fossils we are converting it into the coil, so the carbon content is transferring into that. That is why, student, coil is having a more content of carbon, and it is black colored fossil fuel which is extracted from the ground and is used as fuel for different purposes. Okay, we use it for different purposes. Coil, like if we talk about nowadays, like modern times, modern time is here. So what happened, that maybe at some places we are having trains or the railways which run over the electricity, or we are having some different techniques, but we are having railways also that which operate over the coil. So you can say for the railways it is very important, even though coil is used for iron purpose. Okay, and it is also used for many purposes, like it will use as a fuel. That means fuel is for rails and the trains. Okay, and if we talk about that, how it we can use that, it is also used for sometimes for cooking purpose as well. Okay, so that's how, student, for burning purpose, if you have to, like if you want more heat and more light from it, so that's how coil can be used for that purpose, because it is like not a good fuel, but yes, it generates like it give you heat and light and energy would be there. So that is why you are using it as a fuel. But what is a coil? Coil is a kind of fossil fuel which is black in color, and it is having a content of carbon. Why it is having a content of carbon? Because we are getting it from the dead and decaying of the living organism. Okay, and we extract it from the ground. And why we are extracting it from the ground? So now here is the answer. So, student, what happened, that the coal and petroleum which we are getting it from one process which we called as the carbonization. Okay. Now, what happened, student? As you can see in this picture, that we are having swamp, trees, and everything is there. Now, as the time is passing, so what happened? Like due to any mishappening, due to any disaster, when the trees and the plants got buried under the soil, that they are getting buried under the soil, and with the passage of the time, student, what happened? That there is a deposition of the layer of soil over it. And when the deposition of this layer of soil is over it, so what happened, that heat and pressure increases. And due to that, student, when the heat and pressure is increasing more and more with the passage of time, so that remaining of the plants and we can say about the trees, they convert into the coil. And the conversion of this thing, we call it as the carbonization process. That is why, student, we have to extract the coil from the ground, because it is like that, when the dead vegetation is there, so it is getting buried under the soil. And with the passage of time, when heat and pressure increases, so that vegetation converts into the coil, and this process is called as the carbonization process. Okay, and student, it is not a very easy thing to do. It is a very time consuming process, like very long time. So under high pressure and temperature, the dead vegetation gets converted into the coil, and this process is called as the carbonization. Why we are calling it as carbonization? Because as I have told you, plants, trees, and human beings, we all are having the carbon compounds, and that carbon is converting into the form of the fuel. And that is how, student, coil is also having the what, that is, it is also having the carbon content. You can see it is peat, lignite, and it is coil. Coil is having more and more carbon content, and this process is carbonization, and that is how we are getting coil. And that is the point, student, why we are extracting it from the ground, because as the passage of the time is there, so what happened, that due to the heat and pressure, that means when the pressure and temperature increases because of the deposition of layer of soil over it, and due to that, student, what happened, coil will get under more pressure and more temperature, and that's how it convert into the coil. And this process is called as the carbonization process. Fine, and that's how we are getting coil. Now, if we see that what are the products we are obtaining from coil and what are their applications. So students, we are getting the coil, like I have already told you, that we are having fuel in the three state: solid, liquid, and gases. Similarly, students, we are getting coil in the three state: solid state, liquid state, and gaseous state. So you can see here, student, solid state. So in the solid state, when we are you having some solid kind of you can see that kind of stones, but they are not exactly stones, but that is the solid state. We call it as coke, and that coke is used to make iron and other metals. Okay, and even though this coke is also used for the road formation, like if you have seen that the black roads we are having, so it is used up there. Fine. Now in the liquid, we are having coal tar. That is the black color liquid. It is a black color liquid and it is used in making of dyes, drugs and perfumes. Because student, have you ever observed like whenever there is a coil, so some smell comes over there. So that's why it is used in such conditions. Fine. Now in the gaseous form, student, we are getting coal gas. That on the burning of coal, student, that the gas which release, we call it as the coal gas, and which is used as a fuel in industries as well. Okay, so that's a student coil. We are getting in the three state, that is the solid, liquid and gas, the products which we are getting from coil. So that is the coke and it is the coal tar and coal gas. That means we are getting in the three states of metal like solid, liquid and gases. Okay, and the solid one is coke, liquid one is coal tar, gas is coal gas, and that gas we are getting from the burning of coal. Okay, now we're discussing some of the application that these fuels is used in homes and industries, as I told you, for cooking purpose, and in industry like when we require large amount of heat or energy, then we can use these things. Fine. It is used as fuel at thermal power plants because they release large amount of heat, and in the power plants what we require, student, we require heat so that we can generate electricity. So they are used up in the thermal power plant. It is used to make coal gas, which is an important industrial fuel. Like coal, by burning of coal, students, we are getting coal gas, and that gas is used in like in industries for different purposes. Okay. Now it is used to make coke. Exactly, student. Like the coil, from that coil, like we if we break it down, so we are getting small stone kind of thing from that coil, which we called as coke. And that coke you have seen that we used in for the formation of the roads. So these are the application of coil, student, and that's how we are getting three types of product from coil: solid, liquid and gases. Solid is coke, liquid is coal tar, and the gas one is the coal gas. Okay. Now what is coke? Coke is black colored substance and pure form of carbon used for manufacturing steel and extraction of metal. This coke is used for the students like manufacturing of steel and for the extraction of the metal. As you can see here that this is the coil, and from this coil we are getting this coke. So as you can see that there is the some difference of the color because it is having the more content, or you can say pure form of carbon. It is purely carbon only. Pure form of carbon. That means if coke undergoes a combustion reaction in the presence of oxygen, so definitely you will be getting carbon dioxide from here. And that's how, along with the what, heat and light, because it can undergo combustion reaction. Okay, and where you can get this coke, as we have already studied, that we can use this coke for the manufacturing of other metals or for the extraction of other metals. So that's how, student, coke is a black colored substance, but it is the solid form. We find it out in the solid form. Okay, and it is a pure form of carbon which we use for the manufacturing of steel and the extraction of metals. Okay, now looking at the coal tar. Now student, coal tar is the liquid form which we are getting, like this liquid we get along with the coil. Okay, so coal tar is a thick dark liquid, very dark liquid, which is a byproduct of the production of coke. Like from the coal, students, we are getting coke, so along with that we get coal tar, and this coal tar is liquid in nature. And coil gas from coil, it has both medical and industrial uses. As we can see that this liquid is used in many industries, in many areas to what we can say, to release energy, so that we can use that energy for the generation of electricity and for the something like that. So that's how, student, along with the coke we get some kind of liquid which is very dark black in color, and that we called as the coal tar. Okay, now the second one is the coal gas. Students, the gas which we are getting from the burning of coal, we call it as the coal gas. A mixture of gases, chiefly hydrogen, methane, and carbon monoxide, obtained by the destructive distillation of coal and formerly used for lighting and heating. That, students, the coal, when we burning that coal, as I've told you that coal, what it contains carbon content, but along with carbon content, student, it contain oxygen, it contain hydrogen as well. Okay, and when you burn it, like you are burning it, okay, so from burning of this coil, student, there is the release of the gas which we called as the coil gas, and that gas can, you can see that is used for the lighting and heating purpose. And you can see, students, that it is mainly contain hydrogen, methane and carbon monoxide. Okay, so that is the coil gas, and it is also used up in industries as a fuel. Fine. So it is the gaseous form. That means, student, what we have seen, that this coil we are getting from the ground, that we extracted from ground. And how the coil is getting formed? Coil is getting formed with the help of the process that we called as the carbonization. From that process, student, we are getting three types of the three types of coil, you can say that, or we can say that the coil in the three different forms. That is, the solid one is the coke, liquid one is the coil tar, and the gases one is the coil gas. Okay, so that's how, student, we are getting it, and we are having the applications of them in industries, and you can see in many areas as well. Okay, now coming to the petroleum. As a student, coal is a fossil fuel, so petroleum is also a kind of the fossil fuel. Not a kind, but it is also a fossil fuel, student. But what happened, that the coal we are getting from the dead vegetation. Okay, like vegetation is there. But how we are getting petroleum? So petroleum we get by the, you can see, when the decomposition of organic matter happens, like for the animals, we can say. So from the dead and decay of animals, we are getting petroleum. Okay, from the dead and decay of plants and trees we get coal, and from the dead and decay of animals we get petroleum, but the process is same, student. As you can see here, that these are the animals which are present like over like this much of year ago. And when anything happens, so they just start burning under the soil. And when the temperature and heat increases, so what happens, students? Exactly, like temperature and pressure increases, so it converts into the form of the petroleum. And then, student, we extract out this petroleum from the ground, and then we refine this petroleum into different ways. Okay, along with this petroleum, student, we get natural gas, and that gas is also used up in many areas. Okay, so petroleum is a natural occurring liquid found beneath the earth's surface that can be refined into fuel. Petroleum is a fossil fuel, meaning that it has been created by the decomposition of organic matter over the millions of years. Exactly, it is a kind of the fuel which we are getting from the earth, only from the earth's surface, and it is occurring in the form of the liquid along with the natural gas. And that natural gas we collect, and then we use that natural gas in different purposes. And how we are getting it? So you can see, sea and plant, like animals died and were buried in the ocean floor. Like the ocean floor is there, when they died, so they just get dead over that. And after some time, what happened, that there is a deposition of the layer of salt or the land over that. And that's how, student, when the deposition increases, so what happened, they just move toward like downwards more. And then after some time, when the temperature and pressure increases at that point, so that body of dead and decaying of the animals convert into the oil. And that's how we are getting the petroleum, and we call it as the fossil fuel. Fine, students. So the similarly, as we are getting coal, so we are getting petroleum as well. So that is the coal, and this is the petroleum. Coal we are getting from dead vegetation, petroleum we are getting from the dead and decay of animals. Fine, and they both are the fossil fuels. That means we use them for generating the energy. Now we are having some questions, because we have discussed all of the topics which we have to discuss in today's session. So now we have to see that what are the true false statement here. That fossil fuels can be made in laboratory. Is it possible to form fossil fuels in laboratories? So yes, student, we have to see the true false. So for the true false, student, we have to read the statement. Okay, that what the statement is saying. Okay, just give me a minute. So as we can see here, student, that the true false statements are here. So it is saying that fossil fuels can be made in laboratories. Okay, so is it possible to form fossil fuels in laboratory, that we have to generate that much of temperature, that much of pressure? Maybe it will not be possible for us to convert that and decay of the living organism into the fuels. So that's how, student, it is not possible to form the fossil fuels into the laboratories. That is why this statement is false. Okay. Now CNG is more polluting fuel than petrol. CNG is what, student? CNG is compressed natural gas. Compressed natural gas. But student, what I have observed, that in the case of the petrol, when we use the petrol in our transportation, so there is a release of loads of smoke. That means it pollutes our environment. But with the CNG, there is not such condition, due to which that the pollution of the air decreases. So that is why petrol is not a good fuel, whereas we can consider the CNG as a cleaner fuel. That means CNG is not polluting the environment. That means it is not polluting fuel than the petroleum. So that's how we can say that this statement is again false. Coke is the almost pure form of carbon. As we have already discussed, that coke is the almost pure form of carbon when we were discussing about the products of the coil. So coke, we are getting it in the solid form. So yes, it is the purest form of the carbon. So this statement is true. Okay. Now if we see, coal tar is a mixture of various substances. So is it possible that coal tar is a mixture of various substances? So we can see here that whether it is true or false. So exactly, student, it is true here that it is the mixture of various substances like coal tar, in that we are getting liquid form. So it is having mixture. Now student, kerosene is not a fossil fuel. Is a kerosene is a fossil fuel? See student, how we are getting kerosene. As we have seen that petroleum, okay, that petroleum we are getting from the beneath of the earth's surface, and this petroleum we are considering it as the fossil fuels because it is formed from the fossils of the fossils only. Okay. And on refining this petroleum we get different products, and in that product kerosene is one of them. That is why student, we consider kerosene is also a kind of fossil fuel. And the statement says that kerosene is not a fossil fuel, which is false, because kerosene is also a fossil fuel because we are getting it from the refining of petroleum. So it is a false statement. So as we can see, false, false, true, true, false. So exactly we are getting same answers. Now the question is, describe the characteristics and uses of coke. So coke, we know the students that coke is what? Coke we are getting from coal, and it is solid in nature. If it is solid in nature, students, so what would be the condition? That it is tough. Yes, coke is tough. It is porous. That means it is having pores. That is why, student, if you have seen that we are having charcoal masses, so we are getting it from this products only. So coke is porous. Coke is black in color. Exactly. And it is used in the manufacturing of steel, and it is also used as the extraction of metals as a reducing agent. You will say, ma'am, what is the reducing agent? See student, when we have to extract the metals, because some of the metals present in our, like you can say, in the earth's surface in the form of their oxides, okay, like metal oxides. Now we have to extract that pure metal from their oxide. Now what happened, if it is metal and if it is the oxygen, that means we have to remove this oxygen. And the removal of oxygen, student, can be done, like removal of oxygen can be done with the help of the reducing agent. That means reducing agent help us to remove the oxygen from there. So that's how, student, like it is reducing it, and that's why when oxygen get removed, so we get the pure metal from that. Not exactly pure, but we get metal from it, and then we'll do some process so that we can extract out more pure metal. Okay. So that's how, student, coke is used for the extraction of metals, as it is working as a reducing agent. Okay. So these are the characteristics and uses of coil. So I think so, with that student, we have done all of the topics, we have discussed all of the questions as well. Now what you have to do is, you have to study well, you have to watch the session carefully, and I just request you to study very well, watch every session, and if you are having any doubt, you can post your question on public or private forum of Ask IITians, and you will be getting your answers definitely from expert side. And with that, just keep learning from Ask IITians, and thank you for watching this session.